A useless teenage boy was pinned down by the worst gang of thugs in school and forcibly made to swallow an illegal drug. He thought it was just a pill. At most it would make him dizzy for a while. He never expected that the moment the pill went down his throat, the world would instantly begin to twist. In the psychedelic vortex, all the thugs in front of him suddenly grew fangs, horns, and wings, turning into one demon after another. The demons whispered in his ear, their tone eerie yet gentle. "Go take that wet towel and put it into the microwave to heat it up. Try it and see how powerful the explosion will be." In that state, he actually felt that this was a pretty good idea. So, the towel went into the microwave, and the button was pressed. The next second, a deafening blast tore his home apart. When Lee Yoon-sung woke up again, he was already in the ICU. Flames had devoured his face, and from then on his life was branded with the mark of disfigurement. After he barely recovered and was discharged, what he faced was not consolation, but waves of ridicule and mockery from the entire school. The real culprit, Park Sang-cheol, instead stood off to the side with his lackeys, gloating. "You're really something, kid. Took such serious injuries and still tried so hard to put out the fire. You better thank me properly. If I hadn't dragged you out, you'd be dead already." When he noticed there was nothing grateful about Lee Yoon-sung's expression, he immediately turned on him, roaring viciously. "What's with that look on your face? I'm the benefactor who saved your life. You're not going to thank me? You piece of garbage." Hearing this, Lee Yoon-sung felt it was beyond belief. He wanted nothing more than to start cursing on the spot and tear this bastard who had ruined everything into pieces. But years of relentless bullying had left him unable even to lift his head. Like a trained little dog, he apologized over and over in a low voice, letting what remained of his dignity be worn away bit by bit. He gritted his teeth and endured his time at school. After school, when he returned to the shelter, his mother told him through tears, "The police have just concluded the case. You've been officially named the arsonist." All the classmates who were there gave the same testimony. They said you took drugs and then deliberately started the fire, and that they had absolutely nothing to do with that fire. Upon learning that he had been made the scapegoat, the patsy, Lee Yoon-sung felt as if his entire being had been hollowed out. Although he was not yet 13 and the law would not truly punish him, his family would not only receive no insurance compensation for the fire, but would also have to shoulder the enormous losses of their neighbors. From then on, his life seemed to have a gray filter pressed over it, leaving only a muddled, dazed daily existence. Even so, Park Sang-cheol would never let him go. This guy came to his home every few days, forcing his dementia-stricken grandmother to crawl like a dog, then filming it with his phone and uploading it online as a joke. Scene after scene of humiliation piled up, finally forcing Lee Yoon-sung to wake up from his numbness. He suddenly understood. His own weakness would only make evil people go even further. So, he went to the person at school who was best at fighting and quietly pleaded, "Teach me how to fight. This kind of bullshit law can't protect people like us at all. From now on, Lee Yoon-sung will take revenge with his own hands and throw every scumbag who bullied me into hell, one by one." Over the next few years, he lay low, trained, got beaten, and got back up again and again, until his fighting skills became razor sharp. One day, he heard that Park Sang-cheol had been sent to a juvenile detention center for committing a crime. At that moment, his plan finally took shape. He deliberately committed the crime of robbing a bank, and even brazenly insulted the judge in juvenile court, acting like a completely incorrigible extremist. Just as he had wished, he was locked up in a juvenile detention center full of all kinds of delinquent youths. And he already had a crystal-clear understanding of everything that went on in this place. He had even, in order to be assigned to the same cell as Park Sang-cheol, set his sights in advance on Lee Gwakyun, the officer in charge of disciplining the inmates. He asked casually, as if making small talk, "Instructor, 3 days ago at dawn, did you use a phone app to meet up with an underage girl? And didn't you lie to her that you were driving a luxury car, then trick her into getting in and do that kind of thing to her?" The moment the words left his mouth, Lee Gwakyun's face went deathly pale. With his little secret clutched in someone else's hand, he panicked and demanded, "What exactly do you want before you'll let me off?" Only then did Lee Yoon-sung calmly and slowly state the first condition he was offering. And in order to keep his iron rice bowl, Lee Gwakyun could only use the authority in his hands to assign him to the cell he specified, even going out of his way to instruct the others to take good care of him. Except this group of thugs didn't take that so-called care seriously at all. The fat one opened his mouth and immediately started spreading rumors. With treatment like this kid must have offered up his ass to get into this prime spot. Before he could finish, a foot had already flown at him, slamming hard into that filthy, lying mouth. Not wanting to waste his precious revenge time, Lee Yoon-sung used the momentum to rush at the rest of the vermin, deftly knocking all these irrelevant nobodies to the ground. This scene made Park Sang-cheol, hiding to one side, change expression slightly. He wasn't sure whether this newcomer would also make a move on him. As he hesitated, he saw the newcomer slowly lower the blanket covering his face. The face revealed was one he knew all too well. It was the person he had once treated as a toy, Lee Yoon-sung. Tension instantly turned into excitement, and he saw Lee Yoon-sung suddenly speak in an offhand tone. "There's a way to knock out a professional Muay Thai fighter using just one finger. Want to hear it?" For a bastard like Park Sang-cheol, who was addicted to new tricks, of course he took the bait at once. "What way? Tell me, quick." Just then, Lee Yoon-sung deliberately kept him hanging. Think carefully, that's your favorite method, isn't it? Before the words had even fully fallen, his hand had already groped under the blanket and grabbed a bottle of anti-inflammatory spray. Watching this brainless idiot, Park Sang-cheol, still racking his brains trying to recall, he gave his wrist a flick. A stream of spray shot straight into the other man's eyes. This is how you knock out a professional Muay Thai fighter with just one finger. With that, he raised his leg and delivered a heavy kick straight to the groin. A blood-curdling scream immediately echoed through the cell. Who the hell goes straight for a sneak attack down there? Before he could finish shouting, countless punches were already raining down on him. Seeing that Park Sang-cheol was covering his face with all his strength, his focus entirely on defending his upper body, Lee Yoon-sung instantly changed tactics and poured all his attacks into his lower half. This is the most basic principle in fighting. If your opponent guards high, you hit low. If he guards low, you hit high. Only then did the foolish Park Sang-cheol finally realize, the person he had once treated as a bug now dared to turn around and play him like a monkey. Enraged, he flailed his fists like a mad dog. But the stabbing pain in his eyes made it impossible for him to see anything clearly, so he could only keep comforting himself in his heart. Just hold on a bit longer. Once my vision comes back, I can turn the tables. He had no idea that in the very next second, he would be completely subdued. Lee Yoon-sung grabbed a towel and quickly bound his wrist, then gave it a fierce twist, snapping that arm by brute force, and then seized his head and slammed it down hard onto the floor. Back then, it was Park Sang-cheol who dosed him with hallucinogens and lured him into stuffing a towel into the microwave, triggering a massive explosion. Now, he chose to use that same towel to carry out judgment on this man. He thought the person in front of him no longer had any strength to fight back. He never expected that Park Sang-cheol would start slowly writhing on the floor, using his own blood to painstakingly wipe away the spray from his eyes. Just as his vision cleared, he took advantage of a moment's slack in Lee Yoon-sung's guard and delivered a savage kick from behind. Repeatedly provoked, Park Sang-cheol's fury was on the verge of burning through his reason. He had once been a Muay Thai fighter with a decent record, and killing a piece of trash who used to be at his mercy was, to him, an easy task. In the past, the instant he raised his hand, Lee Yoon-sung would curl up like a worm, begging him in tears to stop. With that sense of superiority, he lifted his leg high and attacked, completely failing to notice that there was now a quietly spread blanket on the floor under his feet. With his center of gravity gone, he crashed straight down onto the ground. No one knew better than Lee Yoon-sung what an idiot like Park Sang-cheol was like. Once he got emotionally excited, he would automatically filter out all the details around him. Dealing with prey like this was, in his eyes, as easy as solving a multiple-choice math problem. The off-balance Park Sang-cheol was completely pinned underneath him. All the humiliation and pain accumulated over the years fell on the other man with each punch, every blow a farewell to his former self. Before long, Park Sang-cheol couldn't take it anymore. Trembling all over, he raised his hand and choked out an apology. "I'm sorry. I really am. But what unforgivable sin did I commit? Back then we were just kids. Isn't that just how everyone plays when they're little?" Those words made the color drain from Lee Yoon-sung's face in an instant. He should have known that someone like Park Sang-cheol, rotten to the core, could never truly grasp how terrifying his own cruelty was. So he grabbed a metal clip without hesitation and stuffed it into Park Sang-cheol's mouth in one go. "Since you love spouting nonsense so much, then don't ever talk again." His fists crashed down again and again, and all the scenes of bullying from those years flashed through his mind like a revolving lantern. Some say that old scars should be left in the past, that time will wash everything away, and that this is how everyone gets by. But to the present-day Lee Yoon-sung, he no longer wanted to be forced to adapt. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was the only way he could protect himself and his family. In the following 5 months, he applied strangulation techniques on Park Sang-cheol every single day, without fail. He even ordered the thugs in the same cell. Every time Park Sang-cheol passed out, they were to make a tally mark on the wall. Now, that wall was densely covered, filled with the record of his pain, total number of fainting spells, 898. And because Lee Yoon-sung held a fatal piece of leverage over Lee Gwakyeon, the threatened instructor could only suppress all his displeasure, even quietly begging everyone in the prison management. "Just let them be. Whatever you do, don't interfere." Unfortunately, there were only 6 days left until Lee Yoon-sung's release. As he was planning his next step of revenge, a mysterious woman came to the prison, claiming to be his sister and having specially applied to meet him. Faced with this overly theatrical contact person, Lee Yoon-sung simply got straight to the point. "Park Sang-cheol is already half paralyzed, so he's pretty much dealt with. Tell me the details about the next bastard." The other party opened the file and slowly introduced. The target attends a certain prestigious high school in Gangnam. His grandfather is the director of a famous hospital, and his family background is distinguished. He himself is also a model student of good character and excellent grades, a member of the student council who often serves the school and his classmates. His private life is squeaky clean, with practically no faults to be found. Could someone this perfect really be a villain? Hearing this, Lee Yoon-sung's expression gradually darkened. He knew that neatly groomed face in the photo better than anyone. He was painfully aware of the filthy, twisted malice hidden beneath Jo Young-bm's perfect mask. Back when he was being bullied by Park Sang-cheol, Jo Young-beom would always be there, watching like a bystander taking in a show. Once, he had even casually asked, "Don't you have an older sister? How old is she?" Thinking of this, Lee Yoon-sung once again declared, without hesitation, "Jo Young-beom, that bastard who ruined my life, is best at hiding his true evil." After the meeting, he returned to the cell, only to find that among the people kneeling on the ground to greet him, one was missing, Park Sang-cheol. "What's going on?" He frowned. The chubby one immediately stammered an explanation. After lunch, Park Sang-cheol just kept hiding in the corner of the wall. When he learned that Park Sang-cheol had begun refusing to eat, Lee Yoon-sung suddenly stepped forward and grabbed him by the throat. "Hey, you damned piece of trash, how dare you waste food?" Strangled until his eyes were rolling back, Park Sang-cheol could only stutter out an apology. This only enraged Lee Yoon-sung further. He nearly used enough force to snap his cervical spine as he warned again. "I told you, you're not allowed to talk. A creature like you, less than human, doesn't get to use human language anymore." His legs were trembling uncontrollably. After being tortured like this for so long, he had already developed severe post-traumatic stress disorder, and the repeated oxygen deprivation had caused brain damage. Park Sang-cheol was no longer the self-proclaimed strongman he once had been. But in Lee Yoon-sung's eyes, this was still far from enough. He made a decision in his heart. In the remaining 6 days, he would make Park Sang-cheol pass out 101 more times, rounding the number up to a neat, complete 1,000. 6 days later, he finally returned beneath the sunlight. The original goal of 1,000 fainting spells had, at the last moment, been exceeded, total, 1,200. This terrifying record made Joanna, who had come again as his handler, very satisfied. She impatiently beckoned him into the car. "In 1 hour, we're starting the next mission immediately." Before taking action, a seasoned makeup artist first needed to create for him an entirely new identity. Not long after, under the makeup artist's almost magical touch, Lee Yoon-sung transformed from a scar-covered juvenile offender into a fresh-faced, handsome high school boy. Without pause, he rushed to the high school where Jo Young-beom studied, stood at the front of the classroom as a new transfer student, and introduced himself calmly. "My name is Lee Yoon-sung. Please take care of me from now on." The teacher casually pointed out an empty seat for him to sit in, saying that class would start in 10 minutes. He hadn't expected that just as he walked past a chubby kid, the other would impatiently block him. "Hey, your self-introduction just now was way too half-hearted. Do it again, and louder this time." He had seen this kind of boring provocation far too many times. He glanced at the classroom door and confirmed that the teacher was out of sight. The next second, his toe lifted, not toward the chubby kid, but toward the hidden figure lurking behind him. The unnatural tension in the chubby kid's voice when he picked a fight had already given away that someone was pulling the strings from behind. When he saw 2 guys hiding in the back, gloating together, Lee Yoon-sung immediately identified the real instigators. Seizing the opportunity, he rained a flurry of slaps on one of the guys sneering in the back row, then cleanly flipped the other one, who tried to rush him from behind, over his shoulder and slammed him to the floor. Then, under the horrified gaze of everyone present, he looked down from above at the thug on the floor and repeated his self-introduction. "My name is Lee Yoon-sung, I'm 18 years old. My hobbies are reading and fighting." That very day, the rumor that the new transfer student had taken down the school bully on his first day spread across campus in an instant. By that afternoon, a group of thugs were already blocking the restroom entrance, fiercely demanding justice for their beaten buddy. They didn't know that all of this was already within Lee Yoon-sung's expectations. He grabbed a nearby broom, first smashing it down on the one closest to him, then, with lightning speed, took care of the rest. The whole thing was over so fast that no one had time to cry out. Just when he thought the farce was over, the third year's acknowledged boss, Kim Sang-wook, arrived in a fury. "Without my permission, you lay hands on juniors in my territory. For something like that, the price is very high." No sooner had he finished speaking than he was pinned to the ground by Lee Yoon-sung and beaten senseless, without a shred of dignity. This scene happened to be seen from a distance by Jo Young-beom. In that instant, a dangerous excitement flashed in his eyes. He struggled to suppress the pleasure in his heart, pretending nothing had happened, first sending his companions away, saying he had something to take care of. After school, just as Lee Yoon-sung was about to leave the campus, he was stopped by Kim Sang-wook, whose head was wrapped in bandages, leading a group of people. "Come with me." They led him all the way up to the rooftop. There, Jo Young-beom was already seated in advance, wearing a smile so gentle it was almost absurd. "You're really good at fighting. You just transferred here and already beat up your classmates like that. If I wanted to sponsor you, how much money would you want? Don't be nervous. My family owns more than one building like this." Lee Yoon-sung only gave a cold smile, then lifted his eyes and glared at him hard. "I'm Lee Yoon-sung. Don't you remember me?" Those words made Jo Young-beom freeze. In his memory, that piece of trash, Lee Yoon-sung, should have red hair and a scar over his left eye. How could he have turned into this clean-cut guy with explosive fighting power standing before him? He grabbed a fistful of Lee Yoon-sung's hair and flipped up his bangs to check. There was indeed no scar over the left eye. A vague panic welled up from the bottom of his heart. Lee Yoon-sung saw it all clearly and knew his intimidation had taken effect. He stopped while he was ahead and immediately changed the subject. "Relax, I'm not the one you know. It just so happens that I have the same name as that Lee Yoon-sung you guys toyed with in that live stream. If I remember right, you were in that live stream too, weren't you? Do you have any idea how miserable my life became because of your little performance? But if a person gets enough compensation, maybe his mood will improve a lot. Didn't you say you're rich? Then show me your sincerity. These words left Jo Young-beom a little dazed. But he quickly caught on. So this guy wasn't that piece of trash, he was a bold, clear-headed monster. This kind of person was exactly his favorite type. He simply took Lee Yoon-sung on the spot to tour the entire building. On paper, the building belonged to Jo Young-beom's father, but in practice, all management authority was in his hands. Inside, they ran a cafe and a hotel, and occasionally took in runaways. As he spoke, he pushed open the door to the sauna on the basement level. The moment they entered, they nearly ran into a burly man. At first sight of that face, Lee Yoon-sung's heart clenched hard. After his house burned down and they were saddled with massive debts, one day his sister suddenly announced that she was leaving with some big guy. He still couldn't forget that disgusting face. When he came back to himself, he heard someone calling his name. After being introduced by Jo Young-beom, the burly man learned he had the same name as that former piece of trash and couldn't resist sneering. He looks dumb already. The veins on Lee Yoon-sung's forehead bulged at once as he shot back. Do you know me? If you don't, then shut up. If you've got guts, fight me right now. The big man hadn't expected the newcomer to dare provoke him to his face, and he couldn't help but get riled up too. Jo Young-beom's expression darkened, and he immediately cut in to stamp the fire out. So you guys don't plan on working together anymore, is that it? Or have you just decided the boss doesn't matter? Right after that, as if suddenly remembering something, he said there was a task he wanted Lee Yoon-sung to handle immediately. He couldn't fully trust this guy yet, so he needed to run a test first. The mission sounded almost laughably simple: just go to a designated spot and bring back 2 people. In order to gain his trust, Lee Yoon-sung did exactly as told. In just a few minutes, he had coaxed 2 runaway girls into the car and led them to a room in the hotel on the building's 5th floor. His speed even surprised Jo Young-beom a little. Pleased, he gave him a hearty pat on the shoulder. From here on, just follow Choi Kyung-min's instructions. Lee Yoon-sung followed in silence, but his gaze was so cold it looked as if he wanted to tear Choi Kyung-min apart on the spot. Reason kept whispering in his ear. If he wanted to get close to Jo Young-beom step by step, he had to become one of them first. Choi Kyung-min entered a password and opened a hidden door. Inside was a computer room, where a few accomplices were forging IDs for the 2 girls. Once they were done, 2 freshly printed driver's licenses were handed to Choi Kyung-min. Seeing Lee Yoon-sung completely in the dark, Choi Kyung-min explained smugly. As soon as someone checks into the hotel in this building, we copy their ID. Then we use their names to rent cars, convert the cars into illegal vehicles, and sell them off. That way, these suckers not only end up with a criminal record, but also get saddled with about 50 million won of debt. On top of that, even if they're minors, we still try to take out every kind of loan we can in their names. In the end, their future basically comes down to 3 paths. In his heart, Lee Yoon-sung already knew the first path. Their parents step in to pay off the debt. The second path. They end up working here like dogs, like that walking knockoff display, Kim Sang-wook. One look and you could tell he'd racked up too much debt and been forced to come here to sell his labor. At this point, Choi Kyung-min couldn't help praising him. You're pretty smart. In truth, almost everyone who had ever stayed in this hotel owed money to Jo Young-beom. From runaway teens to adult customers, not a single exception. The moment Jo Young-beom gave the word, a huge crowd would rush to follow his lead. He could practically be seen as the shadowy hand devouring the youth of this entire area. Here, Choi Kyung-min suddenly grinned and revealed the third option. As for girls who have no backing and no money, Jo Young-beom likes women who are a bit older. He's not that interested in girls who are too young, so most of the time, I'm the one who takes care of this kind of work. When he finished, he even wore an intoxicated look, savoring it. He had no idea that, at that moment, fury had twisted Lee Yoon-sung's face. This guy would be among the very first on his revenge list to be dealt with. Completely oblivious, Choi Kyung-min then pulled out a consent form. On the surface, it looked like a consent form for protection at a shelter, but in reality, it cleverly tucked in clauses for fraudulent loans. This was what he wanted Lee Yoon-sung to do next, figure out a way to get the 2 girls he'd just brought in to stamp their fingerprints on it. If he succeeded, that document would become a one-way ticket sending their lives straight to hell. But he spoke of it lightly. Don't worry, they're still young and want a lot of things. They'll pay it all back soon enough. With that, he walked away as if nothing had happened, leaving everything to Lee Yoon-sung. Having come this far, there was no turning back for him on the road of revenge. He could only temporarily wallow with these beasts. He pushed open the room door and coldly ordered the 2 girls. Put your fingerprints on the consent form. If you want to stay here, you have to stamp it. The girls were clearly already on guard. No matter what he said, they refused. They even warned, if you keep pushing us, we'll just leave or call the police. Lee Yoon-sung had long expected that pack of scum wouldn't hand him something so easy to handle. He turned and walked to the door, slammed it shut with a bang, and locked it. Since Choi Kyung-min had said, no matter what means you use, just get the fingerprints, he would do it in exactly the way they most wanted to see. Amid a few sharp screams, Choi Kyung-min finally panicked and rushed over with the keys. The moment he opened the door, What he saw was Lee Yoon-sung with his arm locked tightly around one girl's neck, roughly forcing her to press her fingerprint onto the consent form. The sight even made Choi Kyung-min suck in a sharp breath. To observe this test, he had specifically arranged a room with surveillance, but he hadn't expected this guy to go so far. Was he a complete madman? Of course he didn't know that from the moment he entered, Lee Yoon-sung had already spotted the camera. And those two girls were also adult actresses he had contacted long beforehand. For this revenge, he had calculated every step into his plan. Not long after, Jo Young-byeom appeared. Very pleased with how cleanly and decisively Lee Yoon-sung had handled things, he decided on the spot to officially bring him into the team and start working together from the next day. But before that, he had to follow Choi Kyung-min and get familiar with all the procedures. The lights went out, and the room was plunged into darkness. Choi Kyung-min took out his phone and a piece of red cellophane, signaling him to watch closely. As long as you put this red film over the phone camera, you can see the infrared LEDs of all the cameras in the room. That's how we make another profit in the women's rooms. He had Lee Yoon-sung memorize where the cameras were, reminding him at the same time. We've got real customers coming tonight. Be careful when you put the batteries in. This stuff is expensive. Lee Yoon-sung said nothing and just buried himself in the work at hand. He knew he had finally infiltrated the real crime scene of Jo Young-byeom. He had to make sure every detail stayed within his control. Just as he was secretly tampering with the equipment, Choi Kyung-min suddenly sighed. Jo Young-byeom is the real genius. He's practically a born criminal. He's done almost every type of cybercrime there is. Like that time there was some piece of trash with the same name as you, he got bullied half to death by him. That waste probably still doesn't know that the way Park Sang-cheol tormented him back then was, from start to finish, all Jo Young-byeom's idea. What's even more disgusting is, that trash had an older sister, right? Because their family was buried in debt after the fire, back then, his sister was. Before he could finish, a sharp pain stabbed through Lee Yoon-sung's heart. Anything to do with his sister instantly warped what had been a calm plan. He forced his emotions down and acted casual, saying it looked like there was something wrong with the camera and asking Choi Kyung-min to come take a look. Just as the other man leaned in without a trace of suspicion, Lee Yoon-sung clamped down on his wrist, swung his leg in a vicious kick, and in just a second, one of Choi Kyung-min's arms was kicked out of shape. A power cord wrapped around his other hand, and he completely lost any ability to resist. Seeing the terror in his eyes, Lee Yoon-sung no longer intended to hide anything. That trash's sister you just mentioned, her name is Lee Na-yoon, and that trash little brother is me. Once, he and his sister were 3 years apart. Because he was small and frail, his sister had more or less always taken on the role of eldest child and half a parent at home. In his eyes, his sister was both family and a hero. One fire swallowed all of that. After their house burned down, they moved into temporary housing provided by the government. A dark, damp semi-basement, but at least they could barely manage to come to terms with the neighbors who had also been affected by the fire. One day, their mother asked again about how the fire had started. From beginning to end, she had never believed her son would deliberately set it, and she cautiously probed. Were you egged on by other kids? Is someone at school bullying you? Under her relentless questions, cold sweat broke out in Lee Yoon-sung's palms. He didn't know how to explain himself in a way that would make his mother truly believe him. Just when he was caught between advance and retreat, his 17-year-old sister suddenly pushed the door open. She stared in shock at the scene and slapped her palm hard on the door frame. How did home end up like this? Lee Yoon-sung had thought that the next moment he'd be met with scolding or even a beating. Instead, she only cupped his face tightly in her hands, her voice trembling yet gentle. What happened to your face? Mom has gotten so thin too. You two have suffered a lot, haven't you? As the true pillar of the family, his sister was far stronger and more mature than others her age. She had excellent grades, a bright personality, and striking looks. Her life path should have been a steady, brilliant road of light. After learning that their grandmother had also suffered severe trauma in the fire and could now barely speak normally, his sister simply turned away in silence, her back drawn ramrod straight. Looking at that taut back, Lee Yoon-sung felt utterly ashamed. Over and over, he regretted in his heart. Things were never supposed to turn out like this. After the fire, his situation at school grew worse and worse. The class set up a chat group specifically to keep him under control. Whatever he did, going to the bathroom, getting a drink of water, going to the office, he had to message the group first and get permission from someone who called themselves Frode with glasses. Every classmate was in that group. Even though he suspected that Frode was actually Jo Young-byeom, he had never had any proof. That day, he came back from the office with a notice slip and requested permission in the group to go to the bathroom. The reply was a single word: no. For the entire lunch break, while everyone else ate, played, and chatted, he sat motionless at his desk until he wet himself. With urine and feces stuck to his pants, he still didn't have the right to stand up. And that wasn't even the most hopeless part. After school, those thugs hung everyone's school bags on him and then took turns beating him on whatever flimsy pretext they could find. When he could no longer stay on his feet and collapsed to the floor, he was greeted by a semicircle of fists and feet. Just as he was gritting his teeth, thinking that this was all his life would ever be, his sister suddenly burst into the classroom. Without a word, she slapped one of the thugs across the face, then, almost losing her mind, used her build and force of presence to crush them all, driving the entire group scrambling in panic. In that moment, Lee Yoon-sung was deeply grateful that his sister had come. But when he lifted his head and saw Jo Young-beom's contemplative face hiding at the back of the crowd, a sense of foreboding rose in his heart. Sure enough, after they got home, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages exploded one after another. He could only curl up into a ball and pretend to know nothing. In the end, he couldn't hide it. His sister picked up the phone and scrolled through the messages one by one. They showed the total control and humiliation being exerted over his life. She was so heartsick she couldn't speak, and in the end only hugged him tightly. You've had to hold out alone for so long. It must have been hard. It's okay now. From this moment on, you have me. Whoever bullies you, I'll take care of them, one by one. That night, a sleazy-looking hulking man knocked on their door. He claimed he was running an errand on someone's behalf and invited his sister to go out for a talk. At the same time, Jo Young-beom sat in a stolen luxury car, dousing himself in cologne while imagining everything that would soon happen with an underage girl. And not just any girl, but his friend's sister, and he was in an extremely good mood. But when he finally saw her, he was not greeted by a shy smile. He was greeted by Lee Na-yoon's iron fist. She grabbed him by the collar and yanked him out of the car with sheer brute force. Faced with her furious questioning, Jo Young-beom lost his composure and could only babble excuses. Kids that age all play like that. No sooner were the words out than a thought flashed through his mind, and a chilling smile curled at his lips. Don't you know what a juvenile offender is? Even if we do something wrong, the law lets us off the hook. If you keep treating me like this, the one who'll suffer will be your little brother. The next second, a slap shut his mouth. His sister had never imagined that a 14-year-old could be this shameless. If the law couldn't punish scum like him, then she would do it with her own hands today. When she finally finished beating him and left, he sat in the car, trembling all over as he nodded repeatedly to her warning not to cause any more trouble. But the humiliation that followed spread through him like poison. The pride he'd always prided himself on couldn't accept having his face turned into a swollen mess by a girl. Just then, Choi Kyung-min came out of the restroom. Sticking his head out the car window, Jo Young-beom shouted at him to grab Lee Na-yoon. But Choi Kyung-min didn't catch what he said at all and just stood there, stunned. To him, that was blatant disregard. Fury rushed straight to his head. He stomped on the gas and deliberately drove straight at his sister and Choi Kyung-min. Luckily, both of them dodged to the side at the last second and weren't killed under the wheels. But Jo Young-beom's reason had already completely snapped. He turned the steering wheel, aiming specifically at where his sister was. He'd long heard she was a track and field athlete, so he didn't hesitate in the slightest. He hit the gas, there was a sickening crunch, and the legs she'd been so proud of were destroyed on the spot. From then on, his sister gave up track and turned to swimming instead. Until another accident completely took her life. At this point, Lee Yoon-sung calmly finished recounting that bloody past. Only then did Choi Kyung-min truly realize that the person in front of him wasn't here for money, and certainly not for status. He was here for revenge, to drag every single person in this place down to hell. But he still forced out a cold laugh. You want to go after Jo Young-beom? That's pure fantasy. Of course he knew how difficult it would be. That was why, from the very start, he had planned to use this entire financial labyrinth to turn the tables and bite them all back. Meanwhile, at home getting ready to rest, Jo Young-beom suddenly received a text saying one of his bank accounts had been frozen. Before he could react, similar messages popped up one after another. Every account under his name was frozen in a short span of time. All of this was orchestrated by Lee Yoon-sung. He tightened his grip on Choi Kyung-min's already mangled arm and icily laid out his first plan. Before long, you'll be found in a state of death. Of course, I won't be the one who kills you. It'll be Jo Young-beom, driven into a corner. It turned out that after that test, Jo Young-beom had given him a dedicated account for paying his wages and covering operation expenses. The account had been opened under the name of a homeless person, so the police could never trace the true user. When he checked the transaction history, Lee Yoon-sung found it had been completely wiped. Out of curiosity, he restored the data line by line. He discovered that every member's account was linked into this funding chain, and especially that Choi Kyung-min had secretly embezzled a lot of money behind Jo Young-beom's back. So he used Choi Kyung-min's name to file a death declaration with the financial system, freezing every account connected to him. Unless he went to the police in person and admitted something had happened with his accounts, Jo Young-beom would never know the truth. So the question was, who would Jo Young-beom suspect now? With icy calm, Lee Yoon-sung tossed the single-choice question back at Choi Kyung-min. Someone like Jo Young-beom would never let a traitor off lightly. Even if Choi Kyung-min told the truth, his own embezzlement would come to light along with it. Driven into a corner, he had no choice but to cooperate. But that didn't spare him from Jo Young-beom's punishment. The strongest fighter, Kwon Chong-soo, sent him flying several meters with a single slap. By now, Jo Young-beom had already marked him as the prime suspect. He threatened coldly, if you don't come clean, Chong-soo will finish you right here. Rage boiled inside Choi Kyung-min. If it weren't for Lee Yoon-sung saying he had a way to fix this, he would never have lain down like a lamb to the slaughter. At the most critical moment, Lee Yoon-sung finally appeared. But to Choi Kyung-min's shock, he hadn't come to save him. He started beating him viciously in front of everyone instead. The fury on his face made it look like the next punch might kill him. Only when he had finished venting did he suddenly whirl around and roar at Jo Young-beom. You bastard. Are you planning on dragging me down with him too? This guy's a drug addict. Do you know that thanks to him, we're all compromised now? His fists came crashing down on Choi Kyung-min's face again and again, his rage frighteningly convincing. But then Jo Young-beom suddenly barked for him to stop and narrowed his eyes in suspicion. What are you so angry about, exactly? Why are you going so hard on him? The expected question finally came. According to plan, Lee Yoon-song answered, didn't you say that account was safe? So what about the money I put in there? All of it gone, just like that? How are you going to make that right? This time, Jo Young-beom fell silent for a second, then couldn't help but burst into laughter. So that's what this is about. Compared to everything else, money is what really matters to you, huh? Right then and there, he promised to fully compensate Lee Yoon-sung for the amount he had lost. At the same time, he also raised one condition. He wanted him to take over the work that had previously been handled by Choi Kyung-min. Only then did Choi Kyung-min finally understand the true purpose behind all this maneuvering. It wasn't just about using him, but about grinding him completely underfoot and seizing his position and status along the way. He had to admit that this boy was an utterly dangerous genius. Using him as bait was clearly meant to turn Jo Young-beom's paranoia against him. However, just when he thought the situation had completely shifted in Lee Yoon-sung's favor, the always silent Kwon Chong-soo suddenly spoke. He's lying. His eyes gave him away. Then he added darkly, I'll gouge his eyeballs out right now. Faced with that kind of pressure, Lee Yoon-sung only sneered. This scene had long been within his expectations. Before coming here, he had specially asked the teacher who trained him, if my opponent is big and likes grabbing my clothes and hair, how do I fight so he can't rip off my wig and I still win? The teacher's answer was simple. Wear a hoodie and tighten the hood. Make sure he grabs your clothes from the start. So when Kwon Chong-soo charged in, he moved in close on purpose, wrapped both arms around the other man's waist, and forced him to instinctively grab for his hood. With that yank, the entire hoodie was ripped off his body, and he gained a brief but absolute advantage. Pulling the hood tight wasn't to protect the wig, but to make it easier for the opponent to strip it off in one go. Seizing that instant when the hoodie came off, he sent a kick flying without hesitation, knocking the burly enforcer flat. Taking advantage of this single opening, he completely reversed the situation. Just as he was about to follow up with another kick, Jo Young-beom suddenly shouted for him to stop. He not only stopped Lee Yoon-sung, but also prevented Kwon Chong-soo from striking back. Lee Yoon-sung immediately stepped away obediently, holding out his hands in a show of innocence. You tell me to stop, I stop. I'm the kind of guy who really listens to his superiors. Otherwise, how could the team keep running? To Jo Young-beom, those words sounded especially pleasing. By contrast, it was Kwon Chong-soo who had just repeatedly contradicted his judgment. A subordinate who refused to listen made him feel his authority was being challenged. He turned and warned Kwon Chong-soo. You need to learn how to listen to your boss. Only after they walked out the front doors of the building did Lee Yoon-sung finally let out a long breath. Thinking back to that kick just now, he couldn't help reminding himself that even with a hit to the face, Kwon Chong-soo had barely managed to stay standing. Next time, I have to be even more careful. This storm temporarily blew over, and life on the surface returned to its usual track. At school, Jo Young-beom was still the model student in the teacher's eyes, the gentle senior in his classmates' eyes, and the good son in his family's eyes. Only Lee Yoon-sung knew that it was all a carefully maintained persona. Rough and cruel in the outside world, yet deliberately gentle at school and at home. For him, that contrast was a kind of sexual kink, a way to vent his desires. Even so, he still had to thank Jo Young-beom. It was this man who personally led him into the criminal group and gave him the perfect position to lie in wait for revenge. Next, all he had to do was, bit by bit, drag everyone behind that gorgeous mask down into hell. That day, the mock exam results came out. Jo Young-beom took an impressive 10th place nationwide. The homeroom teacher looked at the score sheet and sincerely marveled at his ability, while Jo Young-beom, as always, put on a shy, modest face. It's all thanks to your teaching, sir. Watching this, the classmates couldn't help teasing. The teacher and Jo Young-beom are such a perfect match. No one knew that this seemingly well-behaved, outstanding model student had long since developed filthy thoughts about this teacher, who already had a fiancée. Just as he was secretly basking in this, a bald teacher hurried into the classroom. His face was dark as he called Jo Young-beom out by name and told him to come with him at once. The two of them went to a secluded corner of the campus. Mr. Kim could no longer hold back his anger. He flung out his phone and demanded, "Didn't I tell you not to let anyone find out you stole the test papers? So why did the school just receive an anonymous tip about exam cheating?" In disbelief, Jo Young-beom snatched the phone away, and after reading the contents, he turned it back on Mr. Kim. "Did you show the test papers to someone else again?" His tone grew icy. "I'm not taking the fall for this alone. Don't forget how much money I give you every month, old man." Hiding in the shadows, Lee Yoon-sung heard their quarrel word for word. As expected, he sneered inwardly. The one really pulling the strings is a teacher at this school. A lot of their business relies on student identities, and only teachers can abuse so many students' names. To gradually dismantle this black chain, he had instructed Joanna to anonymously post that cheating report on the school's official site. But his goal wasn't just exposure. He intended to use the most lethal, most dangerous method currently available in South Korea to utterly crush Jo Young-beom. Right now, watching Jo Young-beom flounder, the homeroom teacher, who was also eavesdropping in secret, was drenched in cold sweat. This naive teacher had never imagined that the model student in her class and the student affairs teacher, Mr. Kim, would be so vile behind the scenes. While the other side's guard was shaken, Lee Yoon-sung threw out another secret. Jo Young-beom had secretly installed a camera on her desk. More precisely, rather than calling it a hidden camera, it was more like a surveillance device, to track her every move at all times. His words instantly snapped the homeroom teacher awake. She suddenly remembered that not long ago, Jo Young-beom had specially given her an aromatherapy diffuser. Back then, she had foolishly thanked him for being so considerate. Now, looking back, she felt nothing but dread. She decided on the spot that she had to report this to the police immediately. However, Lee Yoon-sung stopped her. If you call the police, you might be the one who gets hurt first. That guy's specialty is turning victims into perpetrators. He earnestly asked, please let me handle this first. I'll cut off Jo Young-beom's right arm to start with. Soon after, Jo Young-beom summoned Lee Yoon-sung and Kwon Chong-soo to discuss how to quietly deal with the anonymous report crisis. The opportunity had come. Pretending he had already investigated everything, Lee Yoon-sung said, I've already tracked down the IP address of the person who posted that article. He laid out the prepared documents. We don't know exactly who it is, but a high school student does live at that address. He suggested that Kwon Chong-soo go and grab the person now. The moment he heard the person had been located, Jo Young-beom didn't hesitate. He immediately ordered, bring that damned brat here right now. With what had seemed like a thorny problem now appearing to have a solution, a hint of gratitude crept into his tone. And the one who had orchestrated all of this, Lee Yoon-sung, took the chance to add, if something like this happens again, just come straight to me. I'll do everything I can to help you. Of course, there'll be an extra fee. In the afternoon, the homeroom teacher called Jo Young-beom to the office. She deliberately pretended nothing was wrong and said, the principal wants to promote campus beautification. There's a lot of work, and he'd like your help. Just as Jo Young-beom was about to agree, he noticed that the aromatherapy diffuser that had been on her desk was gone. His heart tightened, and he forced himself to sound casual. Teacher, where's the aromatherapy diffuser? Did you throw it away? The homeroom teacher looked apologetic. That. The principal said he wanted to use it for beautification, so he took it. At that, the world seemed to spin around Jo Young-beom. When it came to anything sexual, he was always extremely cautious. This was something Lee Yoon-sung had long since seen clearly. In South Korea, sex crimes are among the most sensitive and dangerous areas. For anything related to sex, Jo Young-beom almost always insisted on handling it personally. Even in case of an accident, he would have several escape routes pre-planned. He had probably already worked out some self-protection scheme even in the teacher's case. Unfortunately for him, Lee Yoon-sung had already cut off his escape route. He had quietly turned what had been only a monitoring device into a true hidden camera. Once someone discovered that the aromatherapy diffuser contained equipment recording images, Jo Young-beom would be nailed with the label of a pervert who secretly filmed in toilets. Meanwhile, Jo Young-beom had already heard that the principal had put the aromatherapy diffuser in the women teacher's restroom. The news nearly suffocated him on the spot. After finally steeling himself to risk sneaking into the women's restroom to retrieve the aromatherapy diffuser, two female teachers just happened to walk out. He jerked his head away in fright, thinking he'd covered it up well. Only for one of them to recognize him at a glance. Isn't this our school's national top scorer? Don't do anything weird. Go back to class. Her words hit him like a hammer to the skull. Shame and panic surged up together as he finally realized what kind of social collapse he would face if the hidden filming was exposed. No matter what, he had to get the aromatherapy diffuser back before everything blew up. Biting down hard, he forced himself to calm down, telling himself it was just a brief moment of madness. Summoning all his courage, he grabbed the handle of the women's restroom door and slipped inside on tiptoe. But what he found in there was only an ordinary diffuser, not the aromatherapy diffuser he was looking for. Almost at the same moment, a shout came from the men's restroom next door. Hey, it looks like there's something flashing inside this thing. It was the voice of ethics teacher Min Dong-wook. Standing in the women's restroom, Jo Young-beom fell into utter despair. He did not yet know that every bit of this was part of Lee Yoon-sung's meticulous arrangement. The camera now not only captured images, but could also provide precise evidence for tracking. Once the police or the school got hold of it, it wouldn't take long to find out who had installed the device. And in South Korea, once you are branded as a hidden camera offender, it is almost equivalent to a death sentence. This time, Lee Yoon-sung planned to frame Jo Young-beom as the vilest kind of pervert. He and Jo Anna moved in sync, rapidly spreading the news online. A male student from a prestigious high school has secretly installed a camera in the male staff restroom to voyeuristically watch teachers' every move. Meanwhile, when Kwon Chong-soo arrived at the address he had been given earlier, he did not find some high school whistleblower, but a pack of vicious gangsters. They tried to team up to squeeze money out of him. Only then did he realize he had been tricked by Lee Yoon-sung. Enraged, he single-handedly took down dozens of thugs and swore he would find Lee Yoon-sung and tear him to pieces. On the other side, ethics teacher Min Dongwook had already confirmed that there was a camera hidden in the aromatherapy diffuser. He immediately proposed how to catch the hidden cameraman. First, we preserve the device as evidence, or look up the model of this camera online to find out when and where it was bought. That way, we can quickly identify the guy. Trash that dares to film secretly in a sacred school environment must be rooted out completely. Every word burned itself into Jo Young-beom's ears like a branding iron. For the first time, he truly felt the power of South Korea's sex education and sex crime regime, and the terror of what awaited someone branded a sex offender. From that moment on, he could barely sit still. In a situation like this, it was only a matter of time before he got caught. Just as he was at his wit's end, Lee Yoon-sung called, sounding relaxed as he reported on the day's completed work. Agitated, Jo Young-beom had no patience to listen and was about to hang up. Sensing something was wrong, Lee Yoon-sung spoke with rare sincerity. If something's going on, you can tell me. I'll do everything I can to help you. Those words, offering help, were like a lifeline to the isolated and desperate Jo Young-beom. He immediately arranged to meet with Lee Yoon-sung, saying he needed a personal favor. He wanted him to retrieve something. In a teacher's desk at school, there's a blue aromatherapy diffuser. Naturally, Lee Yoon-sung agreed at once to this request. Helping him get the aromatherapy diffuser back would only drag him faster into the abyss. Unaware of any of this, Jo Young-beom thanked him earnestly over and over, even remarking, "You're more useful than that fighter Kwon Chong-soo." Finally getting the aromatherapy diffuser back, he let out a long sigh of relief and hurried to take out the memory card inside. But he suddenly noticed a small device on the base, blinking red. Before he could figure out what it was, he heard Min Dongwook's urgent voice on the phone. At that moment, he was shouting instructions from his car. "We're almost there. The tracker says it's at the location Miss Oh mentioned. That's got to be the culprit." It turned out that when Lee Yoon-sung had revealed the truth to homeroom teacher Miss Oh that day, he had also taken out a small tracker and told her to secretly stick it onto the aromatherapy diffuser, then place the aromatherapy diffuser in the male staff restroom. As long as Jo Young-beom had a guilty conscience, he would naturally try to retrieve it. And everything had unfolded exactly as they anticipated. Only then did Ms. Oh muster the courage to ask Min Dongwook to check the aromatherapy diffuser in the restroom, leading to the chase now underway. After fleeing to a secluded corner, Jo Young-beom smashed the aromatherapy diffuser in a frenzy, just to destroy the criminal evidence inside. After finally digging the memory card out from the fragments, he was caught right at that critical moment by Min Dongwook. For the sake of survival, he ran with everything he had, sprinting all the way from the alley to the underground parking lot. From behind pillars and parked cars, he watched as Min Dongwook searched for him like a headless fly. If he could just destroy the memory card and stay hidden for a while, so that they couldn't find him, he might actually be able to bluff his way through. But Min Dongwook clearly had no intention of giving up. He shouted loudly, "As an educator, I'll give you one last chance. Turn yourself in before I count to 3, and we can still be lenient." With that, he started counting down. Every number sounded like a death sentence, hammering again and again on Jo Young-beom's already fractured nerves. By the time he reached 3, there was still no response. Utterly disappointed, he decided to use his trump card, walking as he shouted, "Hey, Siri." The entire parking lot echoed with him calling out to various voice assistants. Only then did Jo Young-beom suddenly realize he had his phone on him. He was just about to press and hold to power it off, when the screen lit up to life, responding to Min Dongwook's voice. In that instant, he had only one thought: it's over. When he came back to his senses and slowly raised his head to meet the face behind him, for the first time he truly experienced the terror and suffocation of being watched from behind. Even with his identity exposed, he still refused to give up the chance to escape. Meanwhile, Kwon Chong-soo had finally found Lee Yoon-sung. Blinded by the rage of betrayal, he launched a flurry of merciless punches. This time, he was far more cautious, paying attention to his footing from the very start, deliberately guarding against falling into some trap underfoot again. What he didn't expect was that this was exactly the feint Lee Yoon-sung wanted. Taking advantage of the moment when his opponent focused on defending his lower body, he seized his arm in an instant and executed a clean shoulder throw, slamming him heavily to the ground. This misjudgment infuriated Kwon Chong-soo, but he forced himself to calm down. The more he was being suppressed, the more he had to control his emotions. Only then could he turn the tables. Unfortunately, he overlooked one thing. The opponent in front of him was Lee Yoon-sung. Putting some distance between them, Lee Yoon-sung suddenly asked, "Why are you willing to be Jo Young-beom's right-hand man and do all his dirty work?" Kwon Chong-soo fell silent. On one side was a mother, gravely ill in the hospital and needing long-term expenses. On the other was a rich young master who had promised help and had a grandfather who was a hospital director. Faced with that reality, he had almost no choice. For his mother's sake, he had to cling to that lifeline. Just as he finished saying this, Lee Yoon-sung suddenly flung his cap at him and used the opening to trip him up again. Then he pulled down his sleeves and wrapped them tightly around his neck. With just a bit more force, a few seconds would be enough to blur a man's consciousness. Yet Kwon Chong-soo's will was shockingly strong. On the verge of blacking out, he actually forced himself back to his feet. But that strained, half-collapsing posture only allowed the man behind him, Lee Yoon-sung, to apply even greater pressure. With the doubled constriction around his neck, his awareness began to completely fade. In a daze, he recalled a show he had once watched. Most crocodiles in Amazon waters are opportunists. Once they bite their prey, they never let go. And right now, he was like a fawn caught in a crocodile's jaws, unable to escape no matter how he struggled. In the end, Kwon Chong-soo lost consciousness. Lee Yoon-sung took out his phone and messaged Joanna, telling her to come immediately. It's about time to wrap things up, and to tell Jo Young-beom the truth. Elsewhere, Jo Young-beom's escape ended in failure. He was caught by Min Dong-wook. Yet in order to protect everything he currently had, he suddenly lashed out, kicking wildly at Min Dong-wook's face, kicking as he roared. Why can't you just stay at school and teach? Why did you have to chase me down and ruin a student's future? If you just kept your mouth shut, this would all blow over. Why do you have to go crazy exposing everything? Under this frenzy of unrestrained kicks, Min Dong-wook's face was beaten into a bloody mess and he passed out on the spot. Taking advantage of the chaos, Jo Young-beom fled through another passage of the underground parking lot, just barely avoiding the police rushing in to help. There is always a day in life when nothing goes right. For him, today was that day. He tried to contact Kwon Chong-soo for help, but no one picked up no matter how many times he called. Just as he was panicking and had nowhere left to turn, Lee Yoon-sung suddenly appeared around the corner. A bad feeling flashed through Jo Young-beom's mind. But Lee Yoon-sung calmly explained, "Isn't this the entrance to your office building? I just came to pick up some work stuff." Hearing that, the breath he had been holding finally eased. It was as if all the strength drained from his body as he collapsed into the other's arms. "Lee Yoon-sung, I'm sorry. I might have to trouble you to help me to the office. Right now, you're the only one I can trust." After all his painstaking planning, Lee Yoon-sung had finally gained his complete trust. Since that was the case, he would send this demon wearing human skin straight back to hell. Using the momentum, he tightened his grip in an instant and locked his arm around Jo Young-beom's neck, holding on until the other completely blacked out. When Jo Young-beom woke to the cold slap of rain, he found himself sitting on a high diving platform several meters above a swimming pool. Panicking, his body slipped and he fell straight into the water-filled pool. The problem was, he couldn't swim. In his panic, he could only thrash at the water's surface and scream for help. A sharp pain shot up from his feet, forcing him to dive underwater again. There, he saw, the pool floor covered in sharp thumbtacks. Terrified, he burst back to the surface, gasping for air, having no idea why he had been dumped in such a hellish place. Only when he turned and saw the person sitting at the poolside, Lee Yoon-sung, did rage surge up inside him. "You damn bastard. Why are you doing this to me?" Instead of answering immediately, Lee Yoon-sung asked him in return, "Do you know the story of how the Little Mermaid got her legs?" Clearly, Jo Young-beom had no idea what he was talking about. Seeing that reaction only made Lee Yoon-sung feel all the more disgusted. "You can completely forget the wrongs you've done as if they never happened. You really never fail to disappoint me." He walked over to the drain and yanked open the cover blocking the water flow. "Then let me help you remember properly. My older sister, Lee Na-yeon, was a very strong person. After losing her legs in an accident, she didn't collapse. Instead, she turned to swimming. In amateur competitions, she achieved outstanding results, and for a time, she became a focus of media interviews. But just when everything was moving in a better direction, a lawsuit that should have been an easy win completely destroyed what was left of her will to live. As the victim of a car accident, she sued you for deliberately ramming her with your car, and you argued that you had simply mistaken the accelerator for the brake. I originally thought the judge would side with the victim. But the final ruling was, considering that you were underage, lacked formal driving education, and there was no decisive evidence that you had committed an intentional crime. There was no surveillance at the scene, and the dashcam had been turned off. After the incident, the defendant also actively sought a settlement. Based on these reasons, the sentence the judge handed down to you was 180 hours of volunteer service. That absurd judgment sent my sister's mental state into a rapid tailspin. Until, not long after, a report appeared online that completely shattered the last bit of strength she'd been mustering for the family. No one expected that you, who kept insisting the dashcam wasn't on, would, after the trial was over, extract audio from it and hand it to the media for wide distribution. Overnight, my sister went from victim to perpetrator, someone who had sexually harassed a minor. In an instant, she became the perfect target for every netizen's hunt. That feeling is like being forced to roll over a ground covered in iron spikes. No matter how you scream, no one stops. People only look at the exciting pictures and rush to judgment. Their ears are completely deaf to the sound of pain. From then on, my sister never spoke another word. When I called her again and again, all I heard on the other end was dead silence. In the end, like a puppet without a soul, facing a world that had once given her joy and then heaped suffering on her, she didn't leave any message. She simply jumped from the rooftop, and in the cruelest way possible, said goodbye to me as I arrived on the scene. For all her precocious maturity, she was still just an ordinary high school girl. In those few Little Mermaid stories that end in tragedy, the heroine is cheerful and kind, yet her voice is taken from her so she can never speak the truth. So, how about it, young Beom? Still no impression at all? Should I give you another hint? With that, he jumped straight into the pool and, catching him off guard, drove a kick hard into Jo Young-beom. Jo Young-beom sank to the bottom of the pool, howling like a ghost as the thumbtack stabbed into him. To make this bastard truly feel what it's like to be forced to roll across a bed of spikes, Lee Yoon-sung had prepared for a long time. Yet disappointingly, even now the other still didn't understand why this was happening to him. So Lee Yoon-sung simply tore off his mask and stated it plainly. "Didn't I already tell you? I'm Lee Yoon-sung. The one who used to be completely under your control and then lost his sister afterward. The only younger brother of that jinx and idiot you all called Lee Na-yoon. Now you remember, don't you?" Hoisted up with one hand, Jo Young-beom cared only about avoiding the thumbtacks underfoot and showed not a shred of remorse. Instead, he ground his teeth and shouted, "You're committing a crime right now. You're assaulting me and you kidnapped me. Every camera here must have recorded everything." What he didn't know was that since he was out for revenge, Lee Yoon-sung had long since wiped all the surveillance. With a flick of his hand, he let go, and Jo Young-beom crashed back down onto the sea of thumbtacks. Watching this cold-blooded man writhe in pain, he only grew angrier. Grabbing him by the collar, he slapped that twisted face again and again. "This place has been abandoned for ages. I don't have to worry about cameras at all. And I drove here in your car, so I have all the time in the world to help you reflect. What I really want to know is, where did you get the nerve to still be driving the car that crushed my sister's legs?" At that, Jo Young-beom clenched his jaw and roared in fury, "Why are you doing this to me? Did I burn your house down? Did I personally kill your sister? Wasn't it you, this idiot, who started all of this in the first place?" He never finished the sentence, another slap cut him off. The dull sting in his palm only made Lee Yoon-sung feel a strange sense of relief. "Good. You haven't changed at all, you're still garbage. A totally selfish bastard like you is perfect for me to vent on without holding back." Slap after slap, he meant to carve the name Lee Na-yoon into Jo Young-beom's very bones. "You took her legs, took her voice, and in the end, you didn't even spare her life." This little mermaid's name was Lee Na-yoon. Looking at his face reduced to a swollen, unrecognizable mess, Lee Yoon-sung still gave him one last chance. "Properly apologize to me, and to my sister." The corner of Jo Young-beom's mouth twitched, as if he really was about to say, "I'm sorry." But the next second, he suddenly burst into crazed laughter. "Drop dead, you little brat. Why should I apologize to you? How am I supposed to apologize to your sister rotting in hell?" As soon as he finished, he stared straight ahead. There, Kwon Chong-soo was standing behind Lee Yoon-sung with a murderous look. Seeing his savior, Jo Young-beom instantly lost control, screaming, "Where did you go? I kept calling and you never picked up. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and help me, kill this bastard." The next moment, a heavy punch smashed into his face. This time, the one throwing the punch was not Lee Yoon-sung, but Kwon Chong-soo, whom he had always treated like a loyal dog. Crying in rage, Kwon Chong-soo rained blows down on him. "Jo Young-beom, why did you lie to me? What did you say back then? That my mom's illness couldn't be treated with surgery, only with conservative care. That your grandfather would look after her, and that you do your best to help with her future hospital bills. You put on that sincere act and tricked me into working dirty jobs for you without a second thought. If I hadn't crossed paths with Lee Yoon-sung and heard from him that my mom's illness should have been operated on in its early stage, and that things would never have gotten this bad, I'd still think you were my benefactor. Too bad that even with evidence now, it's useless. In South Korea, the success rate of medical lawsuits isn't even 1%. Even if it hit the media, you could suppress it with your family's power. So the only thing I can do is pay you back in kind. You ruined my mom's life, now you can taste what real pain feels like. Here, fists work better than the law. Today, I'm going to beat you to death to avenge my mom, who's stuck in a hospital bed forever." With a hoarse roar, his fists pounded down like a torrential storm. Seeing that he was about to lose control beyond the point of no return, Lee Yoon-sung suddenly reached out to stop him. "That's enough. If you keep hitting him, you won't get your mom's medical fees back." Those words froze Kwon Chong-soo's fist in midair. He gritted his teeth, but in the end, he held back. Before leaving, he spat out a cold warning. "Have my mom's hospital fees ready by next week. I'm moving her to another hospital. If you don't get it done, you're really finished." Once the utterly disillusioned Kwon Chong-soo had left, Lee Yoon-sung took out a hard drive and dangled it in front of Jo Young-beom. "I heard from your good friend Choi Kyung-min that there's a hard drive in your office drawer. It has a detailed record of all your filthy secrets. This is the real reason I got close to you in the first place. Young-beom, this is the end. You have nothing left now." Listening to this declaration in disbelief, Jo Young-beom suddenly burst into tears. "I'm sorry. I've committed unforgivable crimes. Apologizing only now must hurt you so badly. I'll turn myself in and spend my whole life atoning." But as soon as he finished, his gaze shifted, sneaking toward the car keys lying not far away. Catching the moment when Lee Yoon-sung relaxed his guard, he snatched up the keys in a flash and sprinted madly toward the exit. "Turn myself in? Keep dreaming. As long as I drive home, my parents will fix everything for me." But when he jumped into the car, eager to start the engine and leave, Lee Yoon-sung was already standing directly in front of him. "This is your last chance to apologize. If you drive off now, there really won't be any way back." For someone like Jo Young-beom, who had never truly believed he'd done anything wrong, those words meant nothing. He slammed down hard on the accelerator and sped away. In the speeding car, the more he thought, the angrier he got. With his personality, there was no way he could swallow this humiliation. So he fell back on his old tricks, pulling out his phone to contact a reporter and twist the story around. Just then, the road ahead was suddenly blocked by barriers. He hurriedly stomped on the brake, only to find that the brake pedal didn't respond at all. In a split second, the car went completely out of control, crashed into the barrier, and tumbled off the cliff. Afterward, Joanna reassured Lee Yoon-sung. "Don't worry. The construction site had already set up traffic controls. No one but his car could get onto that stretch of road." Naturally, Lee Yoon-sung trusted her arrangements. The shadow that had weighed on his chest for so many years seemed finally to have reached its end. What he regretted was that, right up to the very end, Jo Young-beom chose death over offering a genuine apology. But at least, everything had finally come to a conclusion. Perhaps now, he was just barely qualified to say to his sister, "You can rest in peace." A few days later, Joanna appeared in front of Jo Young-beom's parents. She spread out the documents in her hands and listed them one by one. "Every item here is a crime your son personally committed. If I hand all of this to the police, your whole family will be subjected to a full investigation." Jo Young-beom's father still wanted to argue, until she showed him a photo of him with the judge, footage of his private meeting with the very judge from the car accident case back then. The dirty evidence of bribing a judge and covering up his son's crimes lay naked on the table. Only then did he truly panic and say he was willing to accept any condition. Joanna, however, had only one demand. Send your son, who barely crawled back from the gate of hell and is now crippled in his left leg, into a psychiatric hospital. Compared to juvenile detention, that's already letting him off easy. I don't want to blow this up into a full public scandal either. Otherwise, everyone involved will be summoned and questioned. She handed them an admission consent form. This agreement spells it out very clearly. Even if a direct family member is present, the patient can only be discharged with the consent of the original approver. As long as I say no, Jo Young-beom will never leave the psychiatric hospital for the rest of his life. For this couple, there was almost no hesitation in choosing between prison and a hospital. No matter how you spin it, hospital treatment sounds far better than serving a sentence. What's more, his injuries from the uncontrolled plunge off the cliff were extremely severe. Serious spinal damage, with the central nerves on the left side, connecting his upper and lower body, completely severed. Even whether he could take care of himself in daily life was an open question. Meanwhile, Lee Yoon-sung received word that the job was done. The shadow that had once weighed on him so heavily he could barely breathe finally and completely dissipated in that moment. Now then, it's time for the next one. Elsewhere, at a filming studio, two moderately well-known entertainers were shooting a show. The interviewee was actor Kang Jun-hyuk, and the other was entertainer-reporter Shin Min-woo. Following the cue cards, when Shin Min-woo asked, "What kind of person were you as a student?" Kang Jun-hyuk's expression suddenly changed. His face darkened on the spot as he fought down his anger and snapped at his manager. "Why did you arrange for this guy to interview me?" That abnormal reaction immediately drew dissatisfaction from the staff on set. Everyone was thinking, isn't that reaction a bit much? Could it be he's hiding some shady past he doesn't want exposed? Just as the atmosphere was turning awkward and chaotic, a young man in a delivery uniform quietly approached the director. He handed over a letter and spoke calmly. "This isn't for Kang Jun-hyuk. It's specifically for Shin Min-woo. Once he opens it, he'll understand." Because inside was exactly what he'd done to Lee Yoon-sung back then. The meaning behind the third tattoo carved into Lee Yoon-sung's body. Thinking it was a gift from a fan, Shin Min-woo opened the envelope excitedly. In the next second, the smile froze on his face. Before he could react, the envelope was snatched away by the curious Kang Jun-hyuk beside him. This time, two people saw the photos clearly. In the picture, a sleazy-looking punk with dyed yellow hair looked almost identical to the real-life Shin Min-woo. Just as Kang Jun-hyuk was about to speak, the man next to him clamped a hand hard around his neck. Leaning in close, Shin Min-woo warned in a low voice, "If you want to keep working in showbiz, shut your mouth. You didn't see anything. Otherwise, you can wait for death." In that instant, Kang Jun-hyuk finally realized, this man who always appeared gentle in public and polite on camera was, behind the scenes, a vicious and violent madman. In fact, even back in their school days, Shin Min-woo had been trash on the same level as Jo Young-beom. In some respects, he was even more malicious than Jo Young-beom. The reason Lee Yoon-sung was bullied in middle school was because Shin Min-woo led the way. Only then did Park Sang-cheol and Jo Young-beom follow along. 4 years ago, when he had just started middle school, Lee Yoon-sung wasn't very familiar with Shin Min-woo. Aside from having attended the same elementary school, they'd barely had any contact. He had only heard one thing. That guy's a delinquent. Always timid by nature, Lee Yoon-sung made a point of steering clear of these problem kids. But due to chronic stomach issues, he often had stomach aches and constantly ran to the bathroom. Because of that, he kept running into those guys smoking, fighting, and doing things the school explicitly forbade in the restroom. Eventually, he was noticed by them. Not long after, Shin Min-woo, who had never spoken a single word to him before, suddenly struck up a conversation and even pretended to be friendly, smiling as he asked to switch seats. Thinking it was just a normal request between classmates, Lee Yoon-sung didn't suspect a thing. During class, the familiar stomach pain hit again. Unable to bear it, he was about to stand up and ask to go to the bathroom, when a hand clamped down on his shoulder. Smiling, eyes narrowed, Shin Minwoo murmured, "Cover for me for a bit. I'm sleepy and want a nap." For someone like Lee Yoon-sung, who never refused others, this was a request he simply couldn't say no to. And so, gritting through the pain, he forced himself to endure the remaining 3 periods. He tried to stand up between every class, but was blocked again and again with various excuses. In reality, it was just Shin Minwoo intentionally not letting him go. He knew all too well how immature kids could ostracize someone for the pettiest reasons, and how easy it was to turn a person into the class laughingstock. At last, unable to hold it in any longer, he bolted for the restroom during the break. But this time, even though he was just using the toilet normally, he was surrounded by a group of boys who pointed their phones at him and recorded. Some laughed in disgust, others started jeering and giving him nicknames, calling him a poop freak who loved going to the bathroom. Just like that, in a single night, he became someone the entire first-year grade avoided, suddenly and inexplicably ostracized by everyone. And the reason Shin Minwoo chose him was nauseatingly simple: he just looked easy to bully, that's all. He even half-jokingly egged on his friend Han Ji-hoon, "Go eat that little lamb." Though he later laughed it off as just a joke, for someone with that kind of fetish like Han Ji-hoon, it sounded like a serious invitation. From that day on, Lee Yoon-sung's daily life became a long, drawn-out hell, until he truly became strong enough to settle accounts with them one by one. In juvenile detention, he personally beat the once abusive Han Ji-hoon into a cripple, then took revenge on Park Sang-cheol and Jo Young-beom, leaving them trapped for the rest of their lives in a fate worse than death. As for the even more hateful Shin Minwoo, he planned to drag him into the abyss using a completely different method, slowly. Compared to the careful planning and deep cover needed to get close to Jo Young-beom, with the now celebrity Shin Minwoo, all he needed was a frontal assault. When the motorcycle suddenly cut off the black van, Lee Yoon-sung didn't hesitate. He raised the baseball bat and smashed it into the window again and again, until the reinforced glass finally shattered under the blows. Then he reached in, grabbed Shin Minwoo by the neck, yanked him out of the car, and slammed him onto the ground. Once, he had been their chosen prey, unable to escape no matter how he struggled. Now, it was his turn to make them taste that same despair. He hammered punches down one after another. Every time he saw that face, ugly to the core, he felt that no amount of beating was enough. But he had no intention of ending this game too quickly. To this man, that would be getting off lightly. When the manager rushed over to intervene, Lee Yoon-sung cut him off with a single flying kick, sending him sprawling. Then, without stopping, he got back on the motorcycle and vanished into the night. A few days later, the news of Shin Minwoo being hospitalized with serious injuries swept across the entire entertainment section. Countless reporters crowded the hospital, all scrambling to dig out the truth behind it. The victim of the attack was just as baffled. Because the attacker wore a helmet the whole time, didn't say a single word, and just rushed in to beat him mercilessly. He didn't even get a chance to see the man's face clearly. Whether someone was behind it or whatever the attacker's motive was, one thing he knew for sure: he absolutely would not let this go. Just then, YP Entertainment's president, Yoo Won-dong, pushed the door open and walked in. The smile on his face was icy as he first ordered his staff, "Get rid of all the reporters." Only after the room was quiet did he stroll lazily up to the hospital bed, flash a wicked grin at the patient and say, "This is a pretty good story hook. You're all over the news right now. If we hype it right, you might blow up off this." Before he could finish, Shin Minwoo cut him off irritably. "Who cares about that crap? I just want to find that guy and beat him to death with my own hands." Yoo Won-dong waved a hand, soothing him like a child. "Relax. It's already being handled. A cop I know has already helped track down who he is. Once my people move in, we'll definitely drag him over here so you can vent." Hearing that the attacker's identity had been pinned down, Shin Minwoo finally let out a small breath. He picked up his phone and started scrolling through the media coverage on himself. As a celebrity, he had to keep constant tabs on his public image. That constant sense that everything might collapse at any moment exhausted him every second. Yoo Won-dong, however, looked excited. "Don't worry too much about the negative stuff. This time, we've got the perfect script. An entertainer brutally assaulted while protecting his manager, an honorable victim who values loyalty." After laying out this PR package, he eagerly picked up a call from a reporter. He personally told them to write it up well and really play up the story, and to plug the drama that was about to start filming. In his eyes, this was finally Shin Minwoo's chance to become a hot commodity. However, just when they thought the situation was fully under control, someone dragged in a hired thug who'd been beaten half to death and dumped him directly at the doorway. Under their stunned gazes, the newcomer slowly took off his helmet. "I'm Minwoo's friend," he said, smiling politely yet distantly. "There are some things I want to talk to him about in person." Of course, Yoo Won-dong wasn't about to fall for that. This was clearly the guy who had just turned his hired muscle into this state. But before he could speak, Shin Minwoo rushed to answer, forcing himself to admit, "We really are friends, classmates from middle school. Let him in. Close the door so we can talk." Under that forced calm, his flicker of panic couldn't have been more obvious. Looking at him, Lee Yoon-sung felt only bitter irony. A star who should have been riding high to the peak of his life was now being confronted by one of his former victims. That victim hadn't come on a show to cry, but had personally beaten him into a hospital bed. The funniest part was that as a public-facing celebrity, there was nothing Shin Minwoo could do right now. He couldn't scream, couldn't fight back, couldn't lose it. He could only watch helplessly as Lee Yoon-sung slowly opened the door to hell for him. Just like back then, when, before reaching the age of criminal responsibility, he'd wanted to fully enjoy the thrill of wrongdoing without legal consequences, and personally opened that very door for Lee Yoon-sung. Meanwhile, back at the company, Yu Won-dong kept replaying that scene in his mind. That red-haired boy who suddenly appeared at the hospital room door was clearly no ordinary friend. Drawing on years of instinct, he could see it, that pair of eyes held a grudge far from ordinary. The troubling part was, he had only just realized that his artist was someone with more problems than he could count. Time flew by, and with Shin Minwoo's injuries mostly healed, the day came for him to be discharged. Outside the hospital, reporters packed the entrance, their long lenses all aimed at him in a frenzy of shooting. But he walked all the way with his head down, saying nothing. That continued silence was instead interpreted by some outlets as calculated reserve. One way or another, the traffic was real. Shin Minwoo had indeed become hot. But he himself couldn't feel happy at all. Lee Yoon-sung was like a landmine buried at his feet, ready to explode at any time. Once it went off, the perfect persona he'd spent years building would turn to ash in an instant. And reality soon proved his worries were not unfounded. Lee Yoon-sung stormed straight into his home, leaving the living room in total ruins. Looking around at the scene, Lee Yoon-sung said in a mocking tone, "Nice place you've got. Some people had to live in a semi-basement for ages because their house burned down, you know. Being a celebrity really is different. You get to date pretty female stars, how enviable." Each line of sarcasm was sharp as a blade, and every cut landed on Shin Minwoo's pride. All he could do was clench his teeth and swallow every bit of rage and fear. Listening to Lee Yoon-sung toss out his promise that he'd be back, he knew perfectly well, the real goal was to provoke him step by step, to force him to admit who he used to be. So he decided to strike first. Shin Minwoo picked up his phone and called his old buddies, the biker gang. His voice was icy. "Bring everyone. I want you to hunt one guy down and never let up." On the other side, Lee Yoon-sung had never expected him to go this far. In his mind, to protect his career and image, Shin Minwoo would eventually bow his head and apologize. Just like back then, when the fire burned him and put him in the hospital. To become a fresh-faced star without scandals, even though he'd never once believed he was in the wrong, he had still forced himself to go to the ward and very reluctantly say, "I'm sorry. Don't bring those things up again." Back then, lying in that hospital bed listening to that perfunctory apology, he couldn't stop the tears from falling. Because in that moment he finally realized, this person he'd taken as a friend since childhood wasn't just the ringleader of the bullying. He was also someone who could throw off all responsibility without blinking. What was crueler was that it had happened right in front of his mother. In that instant, she finally understood that her child had long been tormented by delinquents. In truth, she never should have had to learn any of that. Pulled back to the present, it was only when he heard the news from Joanna that Lee Yoon-sung realized things had changed. Shin Minwoo had already gathered a whole gang of thugs to kill him. Out of worry, Joanna strongly opposed him facing them alone. But after calmly thinking it through, he offered his own plan. Lure them into a narrow alley. On the surface, it looked like he was cutting off his own escape route. But in reality, it was to leave the enemy with none. The real trump card was to bring out the combat monster, Kwon Chong-soo. Once the whole biker gang charged in, Kwon Chong-soo would block the exit and they'd attack from both ends. None of them would get away. Before this, the senior who had taught him how to fight had been strongly against him provoking such a big group. But Lee Yoon-sung knew very well that to deal with someone as despicable as Shin Minwoo, he had to be ready to risk everything. Besides, by now he no longer had anything that absolutely had to be protected to the end. So he feared nothing, and there was nothing he felt he couldn't do. After his repeated insistence, the senior reluctantly agreed, but gave him 2 pieces of advice. First, you must find someone you absolutely trust to help you. Only with at least 2 people can you minimize your own weaknesses. Second, no matter what, protect the back of your head. If you're unlucky and take a hit there, you might drop on the spot, and if you ever wake up, it'll be as a vegetable in a hospital bed. The alley fight ended quickly. When Lee Yoon-sung snapped the last opponent's leg with a kick, Kwon Chong-soo had already finished off everyone on his side. They regrouped, with the ground full of groans. Lee Yoon-sung left a thick stack of cash as payment for this job. He hadn't expected Kwon Chong-soo not even to look at it before refusing outright. "Before, you helped me get out from under someone like Jo Young-byung. I won't forget that favor. There's no way I can take this money." Lee Yoon-sung only answered flatly, "I don't want it either. Especially since this money was bought with my sister's life." With that, he turned to leave, tossing back, "If you don't want it, just throw it away." Watching his back, Kwon Chong-soo suddenly realized, the man in front of him was like a pitiful soul with nothing left to lose. Elsewhere, in Shin Minwoo's apartment, his manager was silently cleaning up the wrecked living room. On his phone, a text from President Yu Won-dong sat quietly on the screen. After reading it, Shin Minwoo's face suddenly darkened. He suddenly clamped a hand over the manager's mouth, his knuckles bulging. "Did you sniff to the president? Tell him I brought in a bunch of thugs. Have you forgotten what kind of guy I am?" His fist slammed into the other man's face again and again, and the violent nature he'd forced down for years burst out all at once. To be a scandal-free star, do you know how much I've swallowed these past years? I packaged myself as quiet and well-behaved, and all of you treated me like some easy-to-bully idiot. Even a useless manager thinks he can look down on me? After this beating, he finally resolved never again to suppress his true self. Soon after, in the underground parking lot, he ran into a familiar face. It was actor Kang Joon-hyuk, the one who'd clashed with him on that recent show. The man had brought a few people and surrounded him, clearly ready to teach him a lesson. This time, he no longer cared that he was a public figure and dropped the gentle celebrity act. He went at them ruthlessly, and the few of them ended up beaten one-sidedly until their faces were covered in blood. After that, he took out his phone and called President Yu Won-dong to lay his cards on the table. From today on, I'm done swallowing my anger. Either you accept the real me and keep me on as a star, or I'll go to the press and spill everything about you sending trainees out to pour drinks. Either way, if you don't help me clean this up, we both go down together. With that said, he hung up right away. Then, in his contacts, he found a long-forgotten name, Sun Young-won. As soon as the call connected, he said coldly, "Listen up, Sun Young-won. That Lee Yoon-sung is out there getting revenge on everyone. Who do you think he'll go after once he's done with me? Of course it's you, you idiot. From now on, I'm going to gather everyone. Before he comes for us, we kill him first."